Welcome to Talking with Tech. My name is Chris Bouguet, and I'm here with Rachel Madel. How's it going, Rachel?
It's going so good, Chris. This is part 2 of our ATIA episode. So tell me, Chris, tell me all the other stories that you didn't have a chance to tell me last episode.
Well, yeah, so I still have quite a few stories from that particular conference. And so the first one that I want to share today is for the last number of years, I've been one of the people participating, kind of facilitator for these sessions called Smackdown sessions. Have you heard of Smackdown sessions?
Yes, because you've told me about them before. But
yeah.
But that's the only reason. The only reason I remember this is because I thought you were talking about some type of wrestling move. And so I was like, oh, cool.
Everyone thinks The Rock is going to be there and it's going to be, John Cena is going to show up and we're going to have some sort of throwdown. But really what it is just people coming up and sharing a resource for like 2 minutes. They smack it down and then the buzzer goes off and they have to leave and the next person gets up and they smack down a resource. So there was 2 of those. And the first one was called the App Smackdown. And can't tell you this. I can't really explain. The room was huge. Like it's this very long room, long rectangular room, and the doors are at the far back of the room. And there was people sitting on the floor, out the doors. I mean, it's just packed because people want apps and they want to know specifically how they're being used, And this, again, not specific to AAC. This is somewhere, but they were more about just general educational technology and assistive technology apps to solve problems for people or to address problems. And so, people got up and they shared different resources. Lauren Enders was there. She got up and she shared some. I'll share one. I said, okay, well, I got to share one, right? I got to share one. So I was just at FETC and I had seen Hall Davidson, who again is kind of famous in the ed tech world. He used to work for Discovery Education. And anyway, he was on a panel and he showed off this app called BellUs 3D. So BELLUS 3D, which is a free app. And so I get up in front of this huge room and I bring up my phone and it scans my face. So people, again, can't see me, but I'm holding up my phone in front of the camera and I'm scanning my face, right? And then it makes this 3D representation of my face, which of course is projected on the huge screen behind me. So my head just got, 5 times as large. But then it's this 3D version of your face, right? It's like, so what is that all about? But the way I was associating it when I saw this at FETC and then when I was presenting it at ATIA was to talk about emotions, right? Like when it scans my face and makes this 3D representation, well, it's whatever. When it's doing the scan, I can be angry or I can be happy or I can be whatever I want to be, and then use that 3D representation for students. And it doesn't have to be my face too. It could be a student's face, because there's no, I don't think I created an account. I think I just, downloaded the app and used it. So it's not saving any information to a server any place, even if I did have to create my own account, it's not really pushing it anywhere to another server. So anyway, I just thought it was just the coolest thing and kind of fun thing for kids is to make this representation of either your parent or you or your teacher. It was really fun.
I'm totally going to download that. I love apps. I actually was just asked yesterday to speak at a conference in LA called the Help Group Summit, which is actually such an honor to speak at because they fly people in from all over the world to speak at this conference. And of course I got on the phone with, the organizers and I'm like, what do you want me to talk about? And they're like, we want you to talk about apps. I'm like, she's like, everybody wants to know about apps. And your presentation, I presented there 2 years ago. She's like, that was one of the favorites. They put me in the biggest room because it's just a testament to people want to know about technology and they want to know about what apps they can download to support either kids on their caseload. There are a lot of parents there, so their children. So it's just something that people really want to know about.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that this Smackdown kind of really does is that you got 2 minutes to kind of show off what the app does, but then really to make it powerful, you have to explain how it's used, because apps will come and go. I always say, don't fall in love with the tool, fall in love with the strategy or the function of the tool, because, tools, I can't tell you over the years how many I've fallen in love with. And then, the app company's out, they get bought out and the app goes away, but the function, what we wanted the tool to do, that persists. That's still a good thing for kids, typically, pervasively. So I'll give you the URL. So if you want to check out what other people, one of the things that we do during these Smackdowns is that, one person is there wiggling the wires and making sure when people come up to whatever device they have, we have a connector for it, right? My job at the session was running around and recruiting people like, come on, you got something to share, go up there, But there was someone else who was tweeting it. Mike Murata was tweeting it. And then there was another person that was documenting it all in a Google Sheet. So I'm going to give you that link right now. It's bit.ly/appsmack20. So bit.ly/appsmack20. And you can have access to that Google Sheet. So you can see, of course, you can't hear it live, but you can see what the apps were that people thought were interesting enough to share. And we included links to all of them. So you can go check them out.
I'm excited to check that out. Honestly, I'm always looking for new resources and new apps. So this is perfect.
So that is only one of the Smackdowns. So that happened, I think, on Thursday. And then Friday, both of these Smackdowns happened around lunchtime. So on the Friday, there was something called the PD Smackdown. So PD is professional development. And what we did there is we took the room was packed with lots of people wanting to get these ideas for how to do professional development. A lot of people come to ATIA who then need to bring information back, right? Or do PD. And what we did there is we had them break up into, or whatever, they could work in groups or by themselves and just, turn to a shoulder partner and chat and discuss a book. So there's this book called, I think it's Actively Learn, and it breaks PD down. It suggests that you break PD down into 4 groups, or 4 categories. So the first one is like the pre-event before the PD event happens. The second one is when the PD event actually happens. What is that experience like? The third is like this follow-up. What are you going to do after the PD event? And then the fourth is what's the generalization? Like where are you going? How do you make sure that it didn't just was a one and done? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so people kind of broke down the different strategies they were thinking of into these different categories. And we gave them about 15 minutes to think of strategies. And then we did it back to the traditional Smackdown. It's like, okay, now come up and share what your group talked about and share different strategies. So all those we documented the same way with a Google Sheet. And so I'm about to give you that. Are you ready for this one?
I'm ready.
Get your pencils out, get your paper out, get your Google Keeps up, get your OneNote out, start typing this. Here it is. bit.ly/PD Smackdown20. So that's bit.ly/PD Smackdown20.
Love it. Love it. Oh my gosh. I have a lot of things to add to my to-do list. All these explorations of Smackdowns.
Now, so I still got more stories. You ready for some more?
I'm ready. I was born ready for ATA stories.
So remember how I said I wish I could duplicate myself and be in more than one place? Well, one thing I had to make a choice, and I made the hard choice not to go to this event. But then I was sort of second guessing myself afterwards because, not that I regret what I did instead, because I'm about to tell you that too. But everyone was talking about, there was all a buzz, this event that happened. And that was the town hall conversation with Katya Hill talking about the AAC certification, the ASHA certification. Again, I wasn't there, so this is all secondhand, telephone game. But people we met on the elevator, people we were talking with afterwards, I was walking around, it was the buzz, right? If you're not familiar, this is a very controversial topic. We've done episodes on it in the past where we had Katya Hill on to kind of explain the whole viewpoint of why ASHA is pursuing an AAC certification. And then we had a special guest episode with Matt Hott, like a crossover event with the Speech Science podcast, where we kind of broke down the pros and cons of this. So you can go back and listen to those episodes in the archives. But this was a lot of people were fired up about it. They were kind of almost protesting is the way I would describe people talking about it, like getting up and saying, why are you doing this? No one wants this, or a lot of people don't want this. Can we come up with a different solution? And basically a lot of people just said it's happening. A lot of people are kind of just shrugging, saying like, although there's a lot of controversy around it, no one seems to be willing to pump the brakes a little bit over at ASHA. So that was the walk away I got from the conversations I had from all the people that attended.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely been a topic of conversation, I think, that's contentious, and a lot of people have a lot of strong opinions about. But yeah, it's going forward, it sounds like, despite all of the criticisms of it. So yeah, I definitely would encourage you guys to go back and listen if you have not listened to those episodes. They're actually they're our top downloaded episodes. I believe they're in the top 10, or at least the 2-part ASHA series that we did with Matt Hott over at Speech Science. So yeah, definitely go back and listen, because we have a lot of different viewpoints. There's a lot of pros and a lot of cons that we discuss and go into detail about.
So what I chose to do instead of going which was going to that event, because I mean, you can imagine I really wanted to be there, right? Because I definitely have my own thoughts about this and where I think we could go with it. But at the same time, there were poster sessions happening, and there were some people there that I wanted to go see. Poster sessions to me are some of the best sessions that at any conference, where you get a lot of traffic going through there. You get a chance to really talk to the presenters as opposed to being talked to. We talked about that, last week. Chris Klein was presenting at this particular poster session, and I hadn't seen him yet at the conference, so I wanted to go and say hi to my buddy, and he went and did, I hope I'm not giving anything away, but he went to the whole Star Wars experience, so I wanted to hear what that was like. We geeked out over, the Star Wars at Disney, which of course I have not been, so I wanted to hear all about what that was like. And he's a celebrity there. There's a line, it's hard to get to him, you know what I mean? So that was fun to learn about that. He had this great little poster session where, when I say little, it wasn't little, it was this giant poster session, but he had all these little QR codes on his posters that linked to little videos, short videos, describing different aspects of what it's like to be someone who uses an AAC device. And I'm like, well, Chris, which one should I watch right now? And he's like, this one. So I scanned the video, and it's like his buddy coming up to him going, "Hello, Chris," speaking real deliberately and loudly, and just kind of laughing how people, talk sometimes to an AAC user, as opposed to just, treating them like just talking to them like anyone else,
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we just had Hannah Foley on, who was talking about her experience as an AAC user, and how it's just like we really need to spread awareness on how to talk to people who are using AAC, because that's just as important as teaching, people how to use AAC, is teaching everyone else around how to be good communication partners, right?
Absolutely. That's a big part of it, right? And that's what Chris was there and trying to do, is promote, this is how you be a good communication partner. So speaking of poster sessions, another thing that was there at a bunch of poster sessions, at least 2 I saw, there might've been 3. It's hard because they all kind of weave together, but there were a number of sessions on AAC camps. And people that are doing camps over the summer for either a week-long summer sleepaway camps. Some are, you come for the day and then you leave and you come back the next day. But that was really exciting to see. I came back inspired, and I'm having conversations around here about trying to spur something like that on, because how awesome is that, right? To have camp counselors who learn to become good communication partners, who learn how to do aided language input and modeling, and then campers can go and have this wonderful experience,
Absolutely. There's actually a really amazing documentary about Camp Alec, which I think is in Michigan. Is it in Michigan?
I think
somewhere around there. If it's not Michigan, it's somewhere around there. And it was a film short that was done. And the documentary filmmaker actually lives in LA. And I've connected with him because they're trying to do a feature-length documentary on AAC users. And so I'm really excited. They, both the documentary filmmaker and some people from Camp Alec are willing to come on the podcast. They're not coming on yet. It'll probably be closer to the summer. But I'm really excited to have that conversation, because I think the things that they're doing at camps like this are amazing, and they're really pushing the needle with literacy. And I think that that's such an amazing way to teach literacy in a really fun, engaging, and social environment.
So Saturday morning of ATIA, I participated I was the kind of facilitator for an AAC Agreements session, and hello, Tina, I know you're listening, was there in the session. Tina is the one that you're talking about, is one of the people involved at the camp up in Michigan. And she was there in the session. I found out afterwards. And Tina, you got to come say hello the next time, right?
Tina, we love you. Okay.
Yes.
We're saying it right here, right now. We love you. Can't wait to have you on the podcast. Don't be a stranger.
So back to the poster sessions, I have one more that I need to talk about. And it's kind of important because last year at ATIA, I recorded a couple episodes, these short small talk version of an episode. And one of the people we talked to was a student named Michael. And Michael is the son of Christine Bawden. And Christine Bawden is the speech therapist who started AAC for the SLP, which is this enormously popular Facebook group, right? Christine Bawden's son Michael is running an adapted switch club that he runs with his friends, and so you can go back and listen to the episode last year that came out. But he was there again, and I wanted to catch up with him and find out what he'd been doing for the last year. So he had a poster session that kind of explains how to switch adapt toys. And one of the coolest things he had, Rachel, you're going to totally dig this, right? He had a business card, but the business card was 3D printed. Right? He did a 3D printed business card. It was the wildest thing. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love this. I love this so much. Cool. Business cards are important. Having a business card that stands out is super important. And what stands out more than something that's 3D?
Yeah,
I don't think anything.
Exactly. So he had his whole board explaining how to, the club that he works with, that whole organization, and where it's going in the future, and really how to switch adapt. If you didn't know how to do it, you could just take a picture of his big poster board, and he really laid it out really well. So congratulations, Michael. It was awesome to catch up with him. All right, so there's still more. I'm so sorry. I still have more stuff to tell you.
So much to talk about.
So much to tell you. I know. Details. Okay, so at FETC, I did a session with Jane Odom all about using robots to teach language, right? And we spent some time together at ATIA with Lance McElmore, who has also been on the podcast, and another AAC user named Carson, who will be on the podcast. We asked them to play with the robots a little bit, and this particular robot is called the Easy Robot, one of the ones that we are working with, where it is voice activated. And so you can talk to the robot and give it directions, and it will follow the commands of your voice. And so the big experiment here was, well, how would it work with a synthesized voice? Mm-hmm. And so we spent some time, 4 of us, and then Jennifer Edge Savage, who works for Saltillo, she came over and helped us too. And so the 5 of us were trying to figure out how we could adapt the voice, and it worked inconsistently. Sometimes we could get the synthesized voice to operate the robot, and other times we couldn't. And we made all these adjustments. We played for over 2 hours before our session to get it to work. But it was still, when we had the actual session, we had this great time. We did this thing where we brought up the lamp words for life, right, on the screen for the session. And we turned on the voice activation on the iPad. So what that means is that all these, anything on the screen of the iPad gets a little number over it, right? And then you can say, tap the number, and it would sort of like if you were tapping it with your finger, except you can control your voice, right? Or we bring up Lamp Words for Life, and we turn on the voice activation, and we say this big joke. We're like, look, see, all the words on Lamp Words for Life have numbers. So now you can control Lamp Words for Life with your voice. And everyone busted. It was great. It was great. But we had a great time playing with the robots. You've heard me harp on this before, so I won't spend much time on it other than to say that it was a really popular session. A lot of people were there, and we were all brainstorming how to use robots in therapy and in teaching, in computer science, and as a pathway to not just literacy, but as a pathway to employment. And so it was a really good session, I thought.
Love that. I have a question, Chris. So is the voice recognition, is that something that the robot company can enhance and it would be more accessible?
Fantastic question. Yeah, that's exactly what we were giving them feedback on, right? Mm-hmm. When they were developing it, they were thinking of human voices. They weren't thinking of synthesized voices, right? So, most companies are not necessarily thinking, they're not geared into this space of AAC, but they were so eager when Jane and I were talking to them about, can you make this even more accessible for people? Because it's something they had not considered. So yes, they were taking that feedback, and they gave us a lot of feedback, right? When we said we were brainstorming with and trying things out with Lance and Carson, we had them on the phone. Like, okay, they're like, make these adjustments, see if you can do this or that. So they were very responsive because everyone sees how exciting and the possibilities there, So that was that session. But then there was the AAC Agreements session that was on Saturday morning. Again, 8:00 Saturday morning. You don't expect a lot of people to come after their night out at Disney or whatever, or what actually we did on Friday night, which I'll talk about here in a second too. But AAC Agreements was, again, very popular, and we had a bunch of different outcomes from that conversation. couple of things that we're thinking about with the AAC agreements, just to kind of catch everybody up. So if you're not familiar, the AAC agreements were born out of ATIA, conversations that happened at ATIA, and they were essentially a list of things that maybe we think that everyone who works in the field of AAC agree upon. So there are certain things we disagree upon, like the ASHA certification, right? But what are some things everyone would see as kind of universal truths? So we have a list of those, right? And we're constantly talking about how to expand them and how to make them more valid. So here's what came out of that session real quick for people that are interested. So first thing is there's this list of AAC agreements and we've broken them into two categories. One that have research backing the agreements, and then the other set is agreements that are yet to be validated with research, or research is pending, right? We want researchers to do more research on these particular agreements because in practice we think they're good, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of the questions that came up was, well, okay, what do you mean by research? Is research like, hey, Rachel and Chris got together and they wrote an article and then they had 3 of their friends peer review it and that's research, or was it like, an empirical research where we had, a case study or whatever, And so someone there suggested that there's a thing called levels of evidence where you can essentially, I think there's like 8 or 9 levels of evidence that you can kind of say, well, this level of evidence is much more valid than this lower level of evidence. And so you could kind of rank the research done based on the level of evidence. So that you could essentially categorize them even more. Just put a number next to each research article and say, well, is this just is this an article written by some peers, or is this an article that has an empirical? And so there's this whole scale there. That was one outcome. The second outcome was the idea that, this is from Kathy Howry. She had researched something called the Delphi method. Have you heard of the Delphi method?
I have not.
No, I never heard of it either, right? But essentially what it is here we're saying these are the agreements, but what if there's people out there that are like, well, I don't think so, Or what if people are like, well, sort of, how do we actually ratify and say this is an agreement, right? And so what she came up with when she was researching this Delphi method is essentially you take the agreements, picture it like a Google form, right? You put them all in a Google form. Underneath each agreement, you mark it from 1 to 10. And then you send that out to a bunch of people, right? Rachel Madel, Vicky Clark, Lauren Enders, me, Gail Van Tatenhove, whatever. You send it out to 50, 100 people, right? Mm-hmm. And they all then look at the agreements and they mark it. They say, let's say it's a, no, I don't think this is an agreement. It's a 1, or yes, this is super. This is definitely an agreement. It's a 10. And you put it somewhere on a scale. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm riffing here, right? I don't know that it'll be a 10-point scale. Maybe it's a 5-point scale, whatever. But you would then have an average of the confidence level for each agreement, right? We gave this to, like those old commercials, right? We gave Crest to 50 dentists, and 25 out of 50 dentists say this is the best toothpaste, right? Same thing. Like this, we sent this out to 100 professionals, and these professionals agree that this agreement is at 90%. You know what I mean? That would get, and this other one, 50%, which doesn't make it necessarily worse. It's just the idea that some might be more valid than others, because these were just conversations that came out of them. I don't know. What do you think?
I love it. I love the AAC agreements. I think that let's all try to agree more on things, right? And honestly, I think that we should guide our practice with these kind of universal truths, right? The things that we now know, because as much as it feels like we all know them, the reality is we all don't. Mm-hmm. And the collective we does not. There's a lot of myths out there that are still pervasive, and misinformation by clinicians, by speech language pathologists, which is, of course, Chris, part of the reason that we started this podcast is because we felt like we needed to change some of these misconceptions and these myths and inform clinicians in an easy to digest, fun, on the go kind of way. So I think that it's important to have these types of discussions and then spread the word, right? Spread the word.
I couldn't agree more. But now there's 2 last events I have to tell you about. And then that will be my whole ATIA experience in 2 different podcast episodes. So
okay, perfect.
The last 2 events were also 2 of my favorite events of the entire thing. So every year I love to go to EdCamp. EdCamp is on Friday night. It is from 5:45 till whenever it ends. And it is like the most passionate people go there, and you just talk all about whatever you want to talk about. People slap up ideas on the board and you go to that section of the, you say, okay, I want to be, as someone slapped up on the board talking about BCBAs and AAC, right? Well, okay, I want to be in that conversation. I want to go learn more about how this is working across, the country. And then you have all these people that come to EdCamp and you sit around the table. And so like Vicki Haddix was there, who I get to see once a year. It lives in Tennessee. She, lives and breathes AAC, but I want to hear about her experience with BCBAs out in Tennessee versus what are mine in Virginia, right? And everyone else that sits around. And so we sat around that table and had that conversation, which was awesome. And I just cannot profess enough about how good the ed camps are, the sessions that happen out are really good at conferences. They're often really good. But some of the best parts is that those conversations that happen in between the sessions, right? And EdCamp is a great way to organize those. If you didn't get to have that experience where you got to talk about the thing you wanted to talk about, EdCamp is the place to go and learn more from all these people. So I cannot stress it enough. It was awesome. And then the last event was, again, Saturday morning after I left the AAC Agreements session, I ran right over to the exhibit hall because Bill Binko had organized for the third year straight the AT Maker Day. And so AT Maker Day was all of these students that have participated with AT Makers, that organization. They had a whole adapted gaming lounge, which adapted gaming is one of the first episodes we did on the podcast. Was like, I'm going to go talk to the Able Gamers people. And there's an old episode because I feel like that whole recreation is such an important part of life, and it's becoming more and more available to people with the Xbox controller and Bill doing all, and so many more other organizations and people working all together to come up with adapted gaming. But that was just one part of it. Was the adapted gaming lounge. There was also these giant tables with students and professionals. Some of them were high tech with 3D printers, and other were low tech with putty and clay and PVC pipe and that kind of stuff. But it was, again, just as great experience. So I can't recommend it enough. Come back if you can come to ATIA next year, come and go to AT Maker Day. It's always super fun.
I mean, honestly, for people who didn't get a chance to go to ATIA, I feel like we did a pretty comprehensive overview, right? I feel like I went.
Well, good. That's how I was hoping that's exactly what these episodes would bring. It would entice people to come. If they couldn't come this year, maybe come next year. But even if you couldn't come, give you a lot of information that you could take back and digest and look at and explore. So thank you for listening to my whole ATIA experience. I just love it.
Well, I'm excited because I'm going next year. If you guys haven't already joined our Patreon, we have a Patreon membership now, and I'm really excited. We have a lot of new members since the last time we recorded, Chris. We have Amber, Bill, Elisa, Heather, Kelly, Crystal, and Marlene Cummings. Marlene Cummings, who was on the podcast from ASHA 2 years ago. And Chris, you talked to Marlene Cummings at ATIA, right?
She's coming right up. You're going to listen to that interview just here in a minute.
Awesome. So if you guys haven't joined our Patreon, please go to patreon.com/talkingwithtech. There you can join our amazing group of core members. We did a play on words there, our core members, because we love core words. And lots of really exciting things to come with the Patreon. Once we get to 50 members, then we're going to open up another tier of membership where we're going to do lots of bonus content behind the scenes and to really talk to our core members and figure out what is it that you guys want us to do. Do you want more episodes? Do you want live Q&A? Do you want coaching calls? What can we do to help you learn more about AAC? Patreon.com/talkingwithtech.
So the interviews you're about to hear the first one is with Jeanna and Maggie, who are from BASSC. They're going to talk all about their kind of 3-year plan for AAC and how they approached it in their neck of the woods. Then you're going to hear Susan and Lauren, who talk about AAC assessments and how they should be not like a one-time thing, kind of an ongoing assessment. And then the last one is, like I mentioned before, Marlene Cummings is coming on talking about the session that she did with a bunch of other people that I couldn't be at because I was presenting at the time, but it was all about kind of the challenges of and barriers to AAC implementation.
So without further ado, let's head on to the interviews that Chris did at ATIA.
Welcome to Talking with Tech. My name is Chris Bouguet, and I'm here sitting at ATIA with 2 people that I went to go see their session. So today, it wasn't today, but today I'm sitting with Jeanna
Jeanna.
Jeanna, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Jeanna Antrim. I work for Belleville Area Special Services Cooperative in Illinois.
And
Maggie Judson. I'm a speech language pathologist, and I work for BASSC as well in Illinois.
Now, BASSC I've heard of. How have I heard of it?
Maybe on Instagram, and we have an Instagram channel or Instagram account, BASSC AAC, and we have a YouTube channel, BASSC AAC, where we share tips and tips and tricks and
related to AC and assistive technology. And on our YouTube channel, we have lots of videos that support our staff for aided language input and how to get free device simulators as well. We walk you through step by step.
Yeah, so let's talk about your presentation a little bit. What was it about? What was the whole experience like?
So we had a session yesterday on capacity building. So we talked about what we do to support staff with implementation of AAC strategies and supports and some of the different things that we try and use. So we talked all about that.
We talk about how we're empowering our families, how we're supporting and improving our school team involvement, as well as how we get our administrators involved. We are lucky to have pretty good administrator support, but just increasing their overall assistive technology knowledge. So.
If I'm remembering correctly, you had kind of broke it down into 3 different phases, right? And you were talking about how you had like a 3-year plan. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, so 3-year plan, because we get, you come to ATIA, you get all these great ideas, you're ready to go back, and you just want to jump in and try everything. So to make it sustainable and make it like we could manage our steps, we said, what can we do this year? When we go back from ATIA and you have a couple months left of the school year, what can we try now? And then thinking through what we could do and even year after that and the year after that. So some of the things we've tried, we love these Power AAC modules that Gail Van Tatenhove made, so we use those to do like a little learning community. We work with families to help connect them with other families of AAC users so they can learn from each other. And then we started having monthly AT meetings with our administrators and just trying those different things spread out. One thing at a time, right?
And you had talked about like the family aspect of it, so let's talk about that for a little bit. How have you been incorporating the families?
Well, we knew that was important to be able to provide them with perspective from other families, because we're not able to provide that for them, and that can be so powerful in their AC journey. So we do have family activity nights where our families can come, they learn about AC, aided language input, how to use their systems with their children, and they get training on that, they get lots of practice, and then they're walking away with materials with whatever our theme was. So if we do a reading theme, they get to walk away with a book that's adapted and ready to go so that they're comfortable using that AAC system at home.
And do I remember correctly that they get to make the book? Like they're doing it's a make and take sort of experience. It's not like, hey, you won this prize, right?
No.
We are going through it step by step, and yes, they go through, they highlight the words, they practice doing the aided language input, they have their child there with them, so they get to practice and we get to offer tips on how it's going or show them how we would do it. And then they take that book home and read it with them that night, and we get feedback. They love it.
And then hopefully carried over to other books as well from the training that we provided.
So we have done that in our neck of the woods as well. And the question that came up in that session, and I was like, okay, is that our turnout has been a little bit light, and we would like it, we want 20, 40 people there, you know what I mean? It's like 3 people showed up, right? Is that been consistent with yours? Or?
It has. So
but it did not dissuade you. That's what you were saying in the session.
Because it could be when, whenever you're doing something and you feel like, oh, we were hoping that it would be this size, and it's not, you think, well, maybe it's not working, or maybe it's not the right fit, but we know it's a good fit. It's just, we get busy at night. We know how that goes when you're with your family. You get busy. It's after work, so that can make it difficult. But no, we've kept at it and we keep offering it. And like you brought up in the training,
we have new families that usually show up every time, and so we kind of look at it as those families are getting the piece of information that they need to effectively implement at home for what they feel like they can, and they're it's hitting the mark for them. And so then that's why maybe they're not coming back. But also for those families that are showing up, we're giving them their information, we're impacting them and making a change for them. And we have heard that feedback from the families that we do directly work with that have shown up. I mean, I've had a parent who said that after they attended in November with the book one, they had just gotten a device this fall, that, hey, can you send home more of those Tar Heel books, is what we usually send home for that carryover practice. I really feel comfortable using the device, and that's my time that I can sit down and feel comfortable, and I'm learning the device because of the books and everything. So, we're impacting that one family. We're making a change for that 1, 2, 3 families that show up, and that's enough for us because we've impacted those families for the rest of their lives, and we can continue to do that. So, we are not dissuaded.
No.
And it's more manageable. So when we have lower numbers, we can provide more hands-on support to those families as well.
Yeah, we can really get in there and give lots of hands-on practice and talk one-on-one and work through things and obstacles they have at home. So it works out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, there was something else that you said, if I remember correctly, and that was you're connecting families to other families. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's this great research article, which of course I'm not going to forget the name, but it was Building Capacity in AAC, and it came out last year, and we were reading it, and one of the things it says in there is that it's our job as professionals to help families connect with other AAC families, whether that's online or in person. So that was one of the things that we started. We reached out to some of our families who have been, their children have been using AAC for quite a while. We know, like, through talking, that they feel really confident and comfortable with using it at home and in the community. So we asked if they would be okay if we would share their contact information with families when they're starting out in that journey, when they're not sure, if they reach out to us and they're saying they're struggling with figuring out how to make it work at home and get it incorporated. We can share ideas, but it's different being able to connect with a family that's doing it and can tell them exactly what's working and not working for them. So it's on a little small scale. We just share it when a family reaches out to us, or if we're at a meeting and we hear those things, we're able to share that. And so that's been a helpful addition.
And we also give the blogs and resources of different online sites they can go to with families on there, because learning is on the demand for all of us these days, and social media is one of those platforms. And so we make sure to provide that with good blogs that we like as well, so that they can have that perspective and can learn on their own.
Awesome. Okay, so we had 3 tiers of your, 3 parts. So there was teaching other teachers and professionals. There was the families, and then administrators. Okay, so let's talk about them.
Well, that was like we said when we started. The biggest hurdle for us, because it was something that really wasn't on our radar. We kind of didn't view that as something that we should be addressing. And so once we started reading books and going on the good websites, we saw, that's definitely, as AT leaders, you're supposed to be addressing that. So we're like, was more of a mind set for us that we kind of had to shift, that should be on our radar, we should be doing it, and that you don't just say things once, you have to do it over and over again. So we're working on working with our administration, who is fabulous and super supportive of us, to help increase that AT awareness. So asking AT questions during interviews, putting AT questions in evaluations for staff, just to really help establish that AT is on the radar, it's valued, and that it is expected of everybody that will be working with us. So
it's really about getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, which is one of Maggie's sayings. Because it is. There are bosses as well as in many schools and everything, and so it is very uncomfortable to repeatedly go up and make that aware. But one thing that we are doing is having monthly assistive technology meetings with our administrators, and then it gives us that platform to be sitting down for the purpose of sharing our knowledge and what's going on. And so it takes a little bit of that uncomfortableness out of it. So.
How did you get started? Because if I remember correctly, I'm guessing here that you went to the pre-conference with Denise DeCoste?
No,
okay, because you were quoting some of the... All right, so tell me the real story.
So no pre-conference.
So let me explain to people listening. So before the ATIA, there are pre-conferences, and one of the pre-conferences that they've had here for many years is Denise DeCoste and Gail Bowser, and they're talking about kind of the evolution of an assistive technology team or practice, and what that looks like in your neck of the woods. And they often talk about, I haven't actually taken it because I do pre-conferences here, so I'm never there, but this is what my book is about and this sort of stuff. So I think we align pretty closely. The idea of generating some sort of plan. I call it like an IEP for your school team, right? For your district, So how did you come up with this 3-year plan?
So we had, sometimes at ATIA, they'll have those little tiny 1 hour things. And so we would go to those and hear it. And then we checked out Quiet.org. So the Quality Indicators for Assistive Technology website, they have just awesome resources and self-evaluation forms. So we kind of started there. And then another resource that they have, the National Assistive Technology and Education Network. And they have so many different resources, and they have it kind of broken down. And so you'll see, like, you can go in here to get information under this heading, like how you can build capacity for your school teams, and then they have a section for building capacity with administrators and things that you should be incorporating. So we spent a lot of time there. They have great publications on their website that some of them you can download for free, or you can become a member, and then they send them to your house, and then you stay up all night reading them so you can go to work the next day, because you're just like, there's so many things we're not doing that we could be doing to help improve things. So we started there.
But I think it was also too a realization that, like, what we were doing was good, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Like, we needed
tweaks.
to do more. And so then that's when we really laid into the quiet, and everything was like, okay, we need to evaluate ourselves and reflect on what we're doing, and how can we make this better and more sustainable so that we're not burning ourselves out, and so that everyone around us feels more empowered whenever they have a student come into their classroom that has an AC system, and that they can actually work with this and they know what to do. So
excellent. In this, how far along are you in this 3-year plan?
Well, we say 2 years, but kind of every year we're like, okay, we're starting our 3-year plan over again.
Yeah.
But no,
We
2
add
years.
something more.
Yeah, we had another thing and we're like, okay, but no, 2 years. We really started hitting it hard last year. So
yeah.
second year, next year, we're looking at it. And of course, it'll just be then analyzing what we feel is really good and continuing to check out those resources to see how we can tweak it moving forward, you know.
So can I sum up and see if I'm doing a good job of listening?
Yes.
Okay. So would you suggest that if people wanted to create their own 3-year plan so they don't burn out and so they can build capacity and empower others, is they start with the quality indicators of assistive technology, rate themselves, right? I remember you made a joke about that, like how we
Do it at home by yourself in case it brings you down a little bit. Yeah, in case you start to cry.
And I know we have done that in our neck of the woods, and it's and I do that when I do certain presentations, is to have groups do it together, so that we are, well, I think we're a 2 on this. No, I think we're a 3 on this, and I think maybe a 2.5. And you banter back and forth about it, but it gives you a baseline, right? Because then 3 years later, this is how you could measure your growth, right?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so that would be a good place
That's
to start.
a good place to start, yes.
Okay, good. And then you said the NATE network.
Yeah, the NATE network is great.
Awesome. And then did you outline it in some way, your steps for the 3 years, or just kind of
It was kind of evolving as we went.
It was whatever we felt was doable at the moment for us to go ahead and tackle. And then some things were like, we're going to wait.
Yeah.
We'll work on this over the summer. We both do extended school year. And so we're together during that summertime, and we can plan for the next year. And we're like, okay, now we're going to put these steps into place, or we're going to tweak this even further and make it a little bit better for next year. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. One last question here. ATIA, you've been here for, today is Saturday, so it's been all week. You should see us. We're all slumped over.
We are
okay.
tired.
Chris, please shut off the room. No. So did you see anything else good? Something that really floated your boat that got your mind racing?
A session by Lance.
Lance McElmore.
Yes.
Ambassador with
It was the
PRC.
first day, Thursday morning at 8 a.m., and it was the most powerful session I have ever been to. It really hits home. So if you ever have the chance, you have to see an AC user present. It will change your life.
Lance has been on the podcast. Yes.
And then we went to a 3D printing one, so we are going to start trying to get ourselves knowledgeable about that. And I know you...
I dabble.
Yeah, you dabble. So we may be reaching out because I want to become a dabbler too. So we went to a great 3D session, 3D printing session that gave us a lot of ideas, good places to start.
Can you think of one? Like, what was something you'd want a 3D print to solve some sort of problem?
Key guards for for iPads for speech generating apps. So that's definitely on our list. 3D symbols.
Yes.
3D.
Much like Project
from the
Core.
Project Core.
We want to be able to make those and have those in our assistive tech lending library that we house at BASSC as well.
And then we found like the coolest fidgets that people are making. So I'm like, that's on my list too. So yeah.
Did you happen to go to the AT Maker space
We
this
did,
morning? Yeah. So did
yes.
you see the whole accessible gaming lounge and
Yes.
how they're printing like the little mounts and things?
Yeah.
It's fantastic,
I know.
right?
For sure.
So many applications and so many different areas. It's exciting because you really are limitless in what you can do.
And we'll leave it right there. Yes. So thank you both very much for taking some time to be on the podcast. We really appreciate it. And thanks for your presentation.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talking with Tech. My name is Chris, and I'm here live at ATIA doing an interview with...
Susan Todd.
How's it going, Susan?
Great.
And...
Lauren Vaughn.
Hi, Lauren. How's it going?
Awesome.
Now, Lauren, you and I just met, but Susan and I are longtime friends from the bus.
Yeah, from the bus. I was so excited when I met you. You walked on the bus and I was like, ah!
You're like, I know you.
I know you. You don't know who I am, but I know you.
But I know now, right?
Yeah.
Now we've met and we're friends.
Yeah.
So I just came into the last 10 minutes of your session on AAC assessments. And so let's talk about that first. But before, let's talk about where you work and what you do.
I am a doctoral student at the University of Kansas, focusing on AAC and family-centered interventions. I just started in August, but before that, I was an outpatient provider with AAC, mostly in pediatrics, where I did intervention and assessment.
Awesome.
And I recently relocated to Caguas, Puerto Rico. I've been there for about 2 weeks. It's been very exciting. Previously, I was a grant scholar through the University of Kansas, where I received a lot of coursework in AAC. And most recently, I was an outpatient clinician focusing on AAC assessments and interventions for about the birth to 5 population based in Kansas.
So, let's talk about that for a second. Puerto Rico?
Yes, Puerto Rico.
So how did you end up in Puerto Rico, and where were you before?
In Kansas, well, I've lived all over Connecticut, New York, Los Angeles, had a, career change midway through my life, then went to Kansas. But yes, my long-term partner is in medical school and said, I need you. So I said, all right, here we go.
So what's your job in Puerto Rico?
Not yet.
Not
Nothing.
yet.
Yeah, not yet. Nothing. It's kind of exciting. So just kind of figuring out where I can do the most good and where the most need is and how I can apply my skill sets to that population.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear. That's going to be an exciting adventure.
I know.
Yes. All right, so let's talk about your session first. So you were doing something on AAC assessments.
Yes, our session that we just did at ATIA was AAC assessments. This is not a test. So think of the TV screen that used to show up for testing the service.
Yes, I remember that.
That's actually one of our first slides. Just trying to bring the focus back to AAC assessments are not pass or fail. They should be dynamic assessments that are continually evolving over time. And for us, where we previously worked, how that looked was that we did it over a period of sessions, typically 6 to 8 weeks, but it gave us time as clinicians to not feel pressure to have all the answers right away. So I don't know about you, but I have some of my best ideas at the most random moments.
Absolutely.
So having a session where you're like, this isn't working today, and having time in between that session and the next one, often I would think of a solution to try. And so it was a dynamic process for me as a clinician. And then for the student too, that gives them time to really experience it, and for the family to get to know all the devices you're trialing and really help to sit at the table of making an informed decision.
Oh, so they're kind of an integral part of the decision-making process.
Yeah, so since we worked in outpatient, we had the luxury of almost always having a family member in the session with us when we're doing device trials. And so we use that as a time to do education about these are the features of this device, these are the features of the software, this is how it compares and contrasts to this other one that we tried, and what are your thoughts? Give us some feedback, ask some questions, because it helps them to have a more solid knowledge base instead of us giving them a piece of technology, inserting it into their family unit and saying, use it.
And I think that's so important because I personally saw so much device abandonment with individuals coming back in to do a reevaluation and long-term just devices being abandoned within a year if there's no follow-up because there's no caregiver input and no caregiver involvement. So I think it's crucial to involve every sort of, team player to be involved in that whole process.
So I know when I walked into your session, the slide that was up was sort of a brainstorming sort of activity that you were doing where you were comparing single session assessments versus multi-session assessments. And do you find that there's a lot of people that still do like, all right, you've got an hour, and I got an hour of my time to prove that what system I think I'm going to try and use?
I think that the danger and the thing that I saw in the area that we were practicing was something would be tried, but they didn't try to problem solve through what they tried. So they would present it once, that's not an option, he wasn't successful, and then that's when it was more of a test than a teaching situation. And no one that I know has ever seen a speech generating device and been like, oh yeah, this makes complete sense to me.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Why would we expect that of the population that we serve?
Yes. So this is something that I have harped on for many years is, first of all, if you're going to try multiple things, what made you try that thing first? Like what you're going to try, if the requirement is to try 3 AAC systems, right? Well, did you randomly pick the first one, or did you have some reason to pick that first one? And if you picked the first one, what was your reason for it? And maybe why not just try that and teach it? And the second thing is, now that there's so much more research on motor planning and we know how important that is, well, I've done something and I've taught you this, where go is on whatever system I chose to choose first. And then that gets the second one you try is influenced by the first one because, well, I just spent all this time teaching you, like you were saying, teaching where the words are. So I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, again, I think it is that teaching component that we're forgetting. It's thinking, oh no, I need to place, 60 icons in front of this individual and they're going to be proficient right away. And if they're not, oh, it's off the table. Yes. No, we need to take that time to implement assessment and intervention at the same time to teach that individual how to navigate and how to request and how to protest and comment on.
And it's not the whole putting icons in front of someone and saying, show me go. If they're just memorizing the arrow, they're not learning language, which again, it always goes back to AAC intervention is language intervention, and you cannot differentiate the two. Otherwise, you're not going to have successful users. And then I think another thing that goes into your point that we presented was AAC should be considered like a circle. Like you have the 7 components of your AAC evaluation, and sometimes it'll change. Like someone might not need as much time with access because it's not as difficult for that individual, but someone might need more. So like the circle, the pie is going to change for each individual, and you can come into the circle from any point, from the communicative assessment, from device trials, from personalization, from education for the family, but you're starting somewhere and then you can go around and around the circle over and over again. It's not a linear process.
At some point, though, you have to pick something, right?
Right.
So, and I know if there's going to be people listening, they're going to go like, wait, what are those 7 things? So,
sorry.
Let
me see if I can pull up the visual. So we adapted this visual from an article by Deitz and colleagues from 2012. And the 7 things that they talked about were multimodal approaches, communicative assessment, symbol assessment, device trials, access method, AAC instruction, and personalization.
Awesome. Okay. And so the idea that you're saying is that it's not a linear process. It's a circular process.
It's a circular
You're looking
process.
at all of those. And when you said that different pieces of the pie chart, some parts of that might be there's literally a drum band walking by right now. What are the chances?
Of course.
Wait, are we in Puerto Rico? Is that?
Where am I?
Okay, now that the drum beats are over and we move to a different spot, we were talking about how the pie chart that you were that it's circular and that different parts of the process might be longer or shorter for other people. That's what you're sort of explaining.
Right. It's you're always going to get the complete result, right? But the picture is going to look different. The colors are going to be different on the pie chart for every individual client that you're serving, because as I said, like, someone might not need a lot of time spent on how can they access a system. But you might assume that because someone has direct access that they might need that time. So you might jump in somewhere else and then you figure out like, oh, maybe I need to try KeyGuard or I need to try the dwell time on the touch because they need that because they're or whatever reason, maybe they're tapping, visual, whatever reason. So you go back and you reconsider access method. So it's going to be very individualized for every client that you serve.
And then the myth of there's like a hierarchy or the steps of we need to start with sign. And once they master sign language, we can move to the PECS boards. And it's great to include all of those components. And I'm saying don't knock them out. But again, put them in that circle. Maybe start with a speech generating device and then go back to sign language and then kind of bounce around here. But again, it's not this step or this hierarchy of things that need to be quote unquote mastered to get to the next level of communication.
So one thing that we did is we presented, we've all heard them, the if-thens of AAC. I'm sure you've heard if they can do this system, then we will try this system. But really, if they can do a low tech, then we want to continue device trials. We want to see, because voice output is powerful and it might not be effective because maybe low tech is the best option, but we need to try everything. And the only way to rule in or rule out anything is to try it. But then if low tech has not been successful, then again, we need to continue system trials, because I don't know how many referrals we got for older kids, like 10 or 12, who had been on a low-tech system that was only used at school because they weren't proficient enough with it enough to be sent home. That was the thought. And then we tried a high-tech speech generating device, and the kids' eyes would light up, and they were so excited, and they had a voice finally. Right. So and I'm like, so much time was lost because of that hierarchy approach to AAC assessments.
Can I ask you to dig in a little bit? So I hear these two words a lot, and I often wonder, what do we really mean by them? So the first word is successful. What does success look like? And how do you indicate it? Because there's a sort of a mentality out there that, well, they used the low tech and they're being successful with it. Therefore, why would we need anything else? So how do we define success? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And then the second word, which is similar, is proficient. Like what makes you proficient? Do you know what I mean? Where it feels like there's some sort of threshold, like a line that you cross, and now you've earned your proficiency badge. Do you know what I mean? So I wonder what we really mean by those words. Right. What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's a really interesting and difficult question, but I can more define it as what I don't think of it as, because I think all too often people say AAC success is being able to complete tasks XYZ, and it's very task driven. But we've heard from this conference is so great because we have AAC communicators here, and they're saying, why isn't it more relationship driven? And why is it, someone used the word noun centric and request centric? And I'm like, those are great words. I'm going to start using those, because that is not proficiency to me. Proficiency is being able to be using a system, be on a trajectory to become illiterate, become literate, to become able to form relationships through communication, to be an active participant in their family unit and within their community, whatever that looks like for that family. And it's all because communication is all about friendships and having friends and being able, it's more than task driven objectives.
Yes, maybe if that's the end result, is having friendships.
Yeah, and I think also just, proficiency doesn't mean that you can put together syntactically complete sentence. I want the blue bird. I mean, that's great, but also maybe they say no bird, want bird, point to the bird, say like. I mean, that's more proficiency to me, is that they're using different communicative intents to talk about this bird, scary bird, happy bird, instead of just this, syntactically beautiful sentence that can only be used in one situation for one specific thing.
Absolutely, because you could program one button to do that. Right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Can I ask you another question? So at the end of your session, you had lots of good interaction and feedback where people were chatting, and one of the people in one of the participants was saying, it was a no-brainer evaluation that I had to do because they were already using this as kind of a classroom tool. And so I just wonder what your thoughts are on that. If they already have it involved in the class, then we'll just use that. I feel like that's one indicator, but...
So we had a similar question. We presented this at the Kansas Speech Language Hearing Association also, and someone said, well, what do you do in situations when a parent already comes with something that they purchased privately? And my first thing that I said was, if that happens, we're initiating this conversation too late. And there is there's a problem in the system that this family or this classroom or that child didn't have access to an appropriate AAC evaluation to begin with. And that someone said, well, this is the solution, I'm just going to try it. So I think it brings up a bigger problem within the AAC community that we need more providers who are comfortable doing it. We need to not be afraid to initiate conversations about AAC with families, because if a family is desperate enough, I don't want to say desperate, but in a sense they are desperate enough, they want to communicate with their child, to just go out and buy an iPad and a communication software that they know nothing about, then the onus needs to be on us. And we need to look at our own practices and say, what are we doing that we didn't initiate this before they felt that desperation?
Absolutely. I think Dana Nieder would say the same thing. Like, it's on the profession that failed the parent, that the parent has to go off and feel like I have to do this on my own, right?
But it's really hard. I mean, like that person, like you're talking about the person in the session, it would be hard if the child has already gotten used to that system to then come in and do a system trial and recommend something different. So I see all the perspectives. So I just go back to, there's a whole nother issue that brings up.
Sure.
And I also think there is an importance of a low-tech system for backup if that's the situation. Where I live right now, we have earthquakes, hurricanes, tsunami warnings. There's not a lot of electricity consistently or internet. So that low-tech is so crucial. And also transitioning over to a high-tech device, you don't want to say, oh, we're done with this low-tech system, this core book. No, that should always be with the child as well. They're comfortable with it, they're using it, and then modeling on that new high-tech system. So again, not completely dismissing the use of low-tech technology once a high-tech system, SGD, is introduced, but incorporating it and still using it to a sense.
Well, I feel like that is part of a sort of a total approach. Every adult user I've ever met has multiple, just like we primarily use our vocal cords and our articulators to talk, but it's also, we have text messaging, right? You're nodding right now, right? So we have multiple means, but we have one primary. So maybe it's the same thing with low tech, is that maybe is not necessarily someone's primary way. It could be, but that would be one portion of a system,
And that needs to be considered in the assessment process. We talked about that of multimodal communication. And when you say to a parent, like, your child and you know how they communicate these things with you, and that is effective and that's awesome. And we're going to try to give you another tool that will hopefully someday be as effective. And we're going to help you get to that point, but we really want to support you in communicating with your child however it looks right now, and then build from that. Like, that gives them, I think that gives parents a lot of empowerment from my experience. Buy-in.
Right.
Buy-in, yes. I think buy-in's a big component of that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we could talk about this for ages, right? We'll check in sometime in the future, because I totally want to hear about how congratulations on you're working towards your doctorate, right?
Awesome.
And you living in Puerto Rico, and what that is going to be like, and when you get a job there, and what that's going to be like, and you're probably going to be working in communication in some way, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Can't wait to hear all about it. So thank you for being on the podcast, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, welcome to Talking with Tech. Here I am at ATIA, and I'm sitting across from Marlene Cummings. How's it going?
It's going wonderful.
How has the ATI experience been for you this year?
It's like being fed by a fire hose. It is constant, dripping in amazing things, and then trying to process them and then know what to do with them when you get back.
Yeah, really, trying to keep it all in your brain. Well, okay, so you and I have only met once before. That was last year, right after the AAC Spotlight, where we had to outline challenges and come up with some solutions, right?
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But this year you were doing that, right? Were you one of the people that did that? Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about that session and what you talked about?
Yeah, so
it was quite different, right, than the way we did it last year, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's hear all about it.
Yeah, so last year I had the privilege of meeting Erin Sheldon and Rachel Langley and Tabby
Jones.
Yes, Williver. And we ended up having dinner together and found out we were of similar mind in trying to figure out how to support kids and families and staff with AAC. And so we started a year-long dialogue over Zoom. So we kept connecting just about once a month and ended up putting a presentation together from all of our vantage points and from the different things we've done, and we presented it.
Awesome. So is it okay? Can you share what some of that presentation was like?
Absolutely. So what we did is start looking at the participation model from Buchelman and Marinda and getting an idea of how we can pull out barriers. Like how we can break through them and help people understand they do have hope, that there's a chance to be able to begin to make the work truly impact kids and families without just giving up or assuming that it's got to be somebody else's job. And somebody else's responsibility. And so we just started breaking down those barriers to get a sense of where can we start. So for us at Oakland Schools where I work, we really approached many of the different barriers at once because policy wasn't a challenge for us, whereas Rachel and Tabby looked at other pieces that they could truly influence and impact on their own or with a small team. So what we discovered, so the room filled up really quickly.
Yeah.
And the first half, everybody was kind of shaking their head like, yep, that's my problem. That's my problem.
Yep, barrier. Got it. Yep, we have that too.
And then we gave a document that they could walk through to identify a barrier, identify where it fit in one of our categories, and then what were some first steps, some resources that they could take. So the second half of the session, we had these like, oh goodness, where they're digging through the document and trying to, talk to each other and sort out, could they make an impact? Where could they start? And that was very exciting. And so we gave resources and this document that they could process. And we've had so many comments since then that it really hit a nerve with people that we need to figure this out and we can do it together.
So is that document something that can be shared beyond the ATIA, or is it for ATIA people only?
I believe so. So I will check with the team, but I know that that was our goal, is for it to be a document that you can take back to your team and begin to look at what are our barriers, where can we start, and what kind of barrier is it. So some of the barriers were attitude, skill, practice, policy, and knowledge, and then where that fit in the work that you were doing. Because sometimes if you hit knowledge, you can shift a lot of things, but if you can't change attitude, which for us, we think of it as mindset, then
oh my gosh,
you can't often get the door open to even move forward.
So I'm laughing here because in my local school district where I work, we did this past year, we did a whole big training module, and people came to do 3 days of training about learning language with AAC.
Oh my gosh.
And the very first activity that we have is doing a Padlet where we ask them to fill out the barriers. And then the second activity is we sort those into categories of, and then we know it always comes out, there's something that has to do with mindset. And then we say, this is the first thing we have to, and the first half of the first day is all about adjusting mindset. So it's kind of amazing that you were coming up, we never talked about this, right?
No, not ever.
But came up with a very similar strategy. And then you target which area. Now that we didn't do. And so this whole thing that I'm really intrigued to kind of take a look at it and say, okay, which one of these areas are we going to attack first, right? So you said in your neck of the woods, policy wasn't an issue. You already had people that understood AAC and that they didn't need to adjust policy. Is that right?
Yeah. So one of the things that we've had, if you've been in the field very long or long time, you might know Ina Kirsten. And so she has been in the field 40 plus years. She's now retired. And at the county I work in, she pretty much founded AAC. Okay. She also was one of the beginners in ISAC and a lot of the movement in the field. And so we already had established that AAC was going to be part of anything that came out of the intermediate school district. We serve 28 local school districts at our intermediate level. Okay. So when I joined the team 10 years ago, we already had 4 AAC consultants full-time. And so we fund all of the communication systems and AT at the county level. So all of those superintendents and directors chose to leave a part of that money from IDEA at the county level.
Okay.
And so that isn't a barrier for us. We also do professional development. We're part of a unit called capacity building.
Okay.
So,
yeah,
which I love.
Already there, where everyone else is like, this is what we have to do now. You're already doing it.
Yeah,
okay.
and that's my brain. I love capacity building. Mm-hmm. And so we are able to do professional development. We're able to get systems out without the full AAC evaluation, because we can switch them pretty easily. Like if we make a mistake or we're not on target, then we can shift. And so that's a big piece for us. But the thing that we found is, which a lot of people struggle with, is if I can only get the device, everything's going to be amazing. And I'm here to tell you it's not so amazing. Yep. It's really good. But the implementation, changing the mindset, being able to shift practice in these teams, because they're wearing hundreds of hats, it seems, during a year, and lots of responsibilities. And how do we embed communication in AAC into their everyday work so that we don't make it harder, that we're able to just slide it in and make it more powerful? So we do PL, we get systems out, we support their tech, we support their learning, provide whatever we can. We also do what's called job embedded professional learning, which we have found is a huge tool, because we're in their classrooms helping them change their practice, and we're doing it together. So they get to choose their goals, they get to choose how they're going to do that, rather than us coming in as the expert and saying, oh, by the way, we think you should learn this.
This is so ratifying for me, because, or is that the right word? Yeah, but you know what I mean? Vindicating. No, that's not the right word. That
confirming?
Confirming, no. Yes, that's the right word. There it is. Because that's exactly what we did with our training module, is that we have those 3 days of training, but when you leave the first day of training, you also leave with a coach. And that coach is meeting with you. Now, it's all about partner augmented input. We're using the s'mores model and trying to follow the but you have a coach that is doing job embedded. We have to be in your classroom with your kids, in your time, in your space, not telling you what to do, but asking you exactly what you said. What's your goal? The goal is to do more s'mores, but
within
better.
that structure and that framework.
Do you want to do more expanding? Do you want to do more right? Or maybe there is something else. That's actually what we're thinking our next year will be. Is okay? There are other skills. Do you want to learn more about and practice least to most prompting? Let's say and let you choose from a menu of skills to pick from.
Yes.
So is that how do you meet the person where they're at?
So we provide a foundational series that has 5 parts. And so probably about 8 years ago, we tried to scour the field, the research, to see what were those strategies that we could have the most impact the fastest, that all teams could learn rather than that expert person. And so we start with the mindset. We use the Communication Bill of Rights a lot in just about everything we do. And we talk about the myths, we talk about perceptions. One of Dr. Zangieri's models of how perception drives expectation, which drives opportunity, which drives achievement. And so we have that model in place, and then we do core vocabulary. So we have universal supports across the county that we provide. We have devices and large core boards and a core flip book and all those kinds of things to our perception is intervention before assessment. So I need to get visibly represented language in front of kids before I'm going to decide about this powerful AAC system that they're going to use. I need them to experience this in their classrooms where they live. And then we do aided language input, of course, and we do vocabulary instruction. So we look at explicit instruction to increase that vocabulary. And then we do opportunities, and we typically embed it right into emergent literacy skills. So we have an initiative in our state around emergent literacy. We work closely with Dr. Karen Erickson and Dr. David Copenhaver. We do a trainer of trainer models, and at our county, we've brought them in for about 12 years now.
Oh my gosh.
To do a 5-day training every summer. And so communication isn't in a vacuum. It has to happen somewhere. And so we believe it needs to happen with literacy.
So, okay.
So that's what people choose from, is we do this training, and then our job embedded and the classroom work is, where do you want to dig deeper? How do you want to figure that out? So that's kind of our menu that they're able to.
This sounds amazing to me, right? It sounds awesome. So what's the barrier? Because it seems like everything's working. Like that's exactly what I would want everyone to be doing, right? So what are some challenges? Or are you seeing No. We used to have challenges, but no, these are how we overcame them.
Mm-hmm. The challenges are getting less. However, the sustainability is the piece. Mm-hmm. How do we keep it going? How do we keep the momentum up in an unstable environment? So we know education is an unstable environment. People are moving and changing and leaving and coming in with, little or no skill, lots of passion, but not sure what to do. So our biggest goal right now is how can we continue to determine our impact? What does that look like? Because, we can get teacher surveys and they're excited. We get anecdotal data, but how do we truly track our impact and then continue to shift enough with the culture right now so that we can keep everybody moving forward and still catch people up when they join us? So that we're trying to figure that out. So we've been here this week kind of thinking about what is our true barrier, and I think it's that sustainability and the momentum.
I could not agree more. Again, so about a year ago, I took a new job as the specialist in our district. So the assistive technology specialist. When I took that job during my interview, one of the things I said is one of our biggest barriers is transitions. People leaving special ed. Well, that was part of my barrier that I mentioned in the challenge last year was that, and we see it this year. We just spent all this time training and coaching, and people are leaving, and I find that with administration is that we'll have everything set up, and that administrator then retires, and at the new person, we got to start all over again with that mindset and with all the other factors. So, that sustainability, I think that is a big challenge for everybody, So.
One piece that we keep kind of digging deeper in is the capacity building piece, because a lot of times people think capacity building is just getting everybody informed. And we believe a second step is getting people to become influencers. So in local districts, not only do we want that team to figure it out or the administrator, but we want people on the ground that are not going to let the story end. And so it can't just be us carrying the story. It has to be those people that grab that passion and keep it going. And we're
tell
finding
their own story. Yes.
Yep. And so we're finding in our districts when that's happening, it's more the administrator will contact, oh, by the way, I hear we need to get more of this, or I hear that I need to talk to you about whatever. And that's coming out of the foundation of that district, and that mindset that they have and that culture. And it's not always us having to go back in and say, oh, by the way, now it's not working everywhere, obviously. We have 28 districts, but we do feel that we've got some momentum on our thinking, at least, about that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking some of your time today out of ATIA. I know it's super busy, and I know there's so much to do and so much to learn. So taking a few minutes to come over here, huddle with me into this cold corner where the air conditioning's blowing on us, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
Please listen carefully.
Hi, I'm Matt Hott, one of the hosts of Speech Science, a weekly podcast bringing you all the information that you can handle related to speech sciences and disabilities. Michelle Wintering, Michael McLeod, and I interview leaders and difference makers in the field. Every Tuesday, we drop a new episode. You can find us on iTunes, Android, and on our website, www.speechscience.org/Speech Science Podcast. Join us as we try to find the answers to the question,
what is communication?
You're listening to the Exceptional Podcast Network.